Welcome to The Naked Truth. And now, your host, Bridget Barclay.
Good evening, America, and a very good early morning here in England, as I always say, because it always is. Tonight's guest is, I came across his book, Psychic Sasquatch, in 2012, and I absolutely loved it. I'm a huge Sasquatch fan. I've had my own gifting experiences, and I do believe that it is due to my UFO encounters, which we will talk about later. I want to say that Kewaunee is here to talk about his research. He's a master of herbalism, hypnotherapy, anthropology, holistic health, and he's an ET and Sasquatch contactee. And we're going to be talking tonight about communication telepathically and on a sort of empathy level, because that's how I believe that why they choose certain people for this contact to spread the awareness. It's not just a terrestrial animal. I believe, and like many, that these entities here are with us to help us, no different as the UFO flurry is happening to many contactees. So without further ado, I'm just going to bring Kewaunee in now, and we're going to have an absolutely amazing talk. Hello, you. It's such a pleasure to have you. Good evening. It's a very good early morning here for me in England, but I'm doing it because I love doing it, and it's such a pleasure to get to talk to you tonight and to get a different perspective from many others that talk about, let's say, the Bigfoot. I'm more of the Sasquatch and of the interdimensional level, because I have had and been gifted by Sasquatch, and I feel totally blessed by it. So you've got quite a bit of history in all of this. From you've been doing this for a long time. Please, can you talk about your introduction into this, and then we'll start from there, please.
Well, I've been researching since the mid-1950s, and I started having experiences with the Sasquatch, but I went in denial. Supposedly at that time there wasn't very much literature, and therefore I was in Western Massachusetts, out in the woods, and I thought, no, they're not here. That didn't happen. I was just in my teens. So as time went on, I started having experiences, but I still didn't get it. I lived in England for a while, in Harrogate, Yorkshire, and during that time, I climbed the two highest mountains in Great Britain, Ben Nevis in the Scottish Highlands and Mount Snowdon in Wales. When I was at the top of Ben Nevis in Scotland, I had an encounter with a Sasquatch, and there were 3 witnesses there. I went in denial again. So that really didn't happen. I mean, it's interesting what the mind will do, because at that time, I believe they were just in the Pacific Northwest there and into Canada, that region of Canada, which of course they're in every state. They're all through Canada, and there's 7 different, they told me, there's 7 different types of their people all over the world, different races, and they are people. They're not animals or monsters.
No, exactly.
In spite of how they look. They told me that they were bioengineered by these evolved ETs, and that they were given enough in terms of their DNA to control their body temperature, so they could live in the desert, they could live in the Arctic, and so on, just by them. And it's also interesting that
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, they can live virtually anywhere, and be comfortable. Now, they've several times, there are people that I trained and told them what to do and so on. And I told one man, if you get into trouble, telepath to them. And this was in the high desert of Arizona. And he went out to this area. It took 4 hours to get out there from his place. And he didn't realize it was in April, but the nights were freezing cold, even though it was hot during the day. So he was sleeping in the bed of his truck, but he was freezing. And he said, God, I can't believe how cold it is. So he telepathed to the Sasquatch there and told him, I'm freezing. Can you help me? He didn't know what they were going to do. And within minutes, he started to warm up and he got nice and toasty. And because he brought lighters, he had 2 sleeping bags. He brought one, a summer bag, not realizing that it would be that cold there. Yeah. So finally, he says 15 minutes went by. He had to telepath to them. He says, can you turn down the heat? I'm starting to sweat. So, which they did comply and helped him.
Regulated him.
Time, yes. And I had taught him all this stuff and taught him how to correctly use telepathy. And
it's no different than asking a guide, I suppose. It's no different than like asking a guide or to help out, to reach out.
Yes. One time he went to a back road to investigate, and then he realized there was nothing there, but he kept driving and driving. And he said, I better turn around or I'll run out of gas. And when he went to turn around, he backed up and he ended up in the ditch. And he was stuck in the middle of nowhere, and he had never seen one car or truck or anybody out there. So how is he going to get back? So again, he telepathed, remembered what I told him, and he telepathed to the Sasquatch people. And within minutes, he received a telepathic message. We will help you, but do not look in the rear view mirror when we help you. And just all of a sudden, the back end of the truck was lifted up back onto the road, and he drove away. So he's had these experiences. He came up to visit me several times here in Washington State, and he stayed for a few weeks and then drive back to Arizona. And on the way back, he took a different route and went through California and the desert. And he drove for some time, and there were very, very little cars. And he came to a general store in the middle of nowhere. And he went in, got something to drink and some snack food. But while he was walking in on the little porch were 3 people, a man, woman, and a young woman. And he recognized that the man was a movie star. He said he couldn't remember exactly the guy's name, but he was in many different movies. And the guy stopped him and said, do you have a different, some kind of a piece of metal that they use to open a car door? And he said, no, why?
Like a crowbar. I left my
keys yes. And he says, I left my keys in the car when we get out, and I locked myself in. We've been sitting here for hours, and we don't know what to do right at this point. So he said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. So when my friend went into this old general store, got a few things, he felt the Sasquatch there that followed him from my place interdimensionally. And so he says, I feel bad for this man. I'd like to help him. Can you unlock his car for him? And he said, okay. The Sasquatch said, okay. So my friend walked outside and said to the guy, when you see me get in my car, or my truck rather, he said, go ahead and try your car to see if it's unlocked. And the guy scratched his head because he wasn't anywhere near his car, and he said he couldn't help him. So the when my friend walked by the guy's car, he heard a loud click of,
Right. It was the thing coming up. Yeah.
By the time he got to his car, the guy had the doors open, and he was scratching his head, looking at the guy as my friend was driving away. So these are some of the things. They're not monsters. They're not animals. In fact, the only monsters I know are the people that are trying to kill them. They're
right.
violent people.
Silly TV shows.
They got mental health. They have mental health issues, basically, and there's a lot of them like that. And they're focusing on being famous and making a lot of money, kind of thing, on the body.
Yeah, all those shit TV shows. Yeah, yeah. So, for yourself, then, you said that you had experiences here in England. That's quite interesting. I didn't know that. So, and you were with witnesses. What happened? Can I ask?
Well, there was a fog bank on top of Ben Nevis, the very top, which all of a sudden was like a miniature plateau. It was flat right on top. But the fog bank was something I've never seen before, experienced. It was like going into another dimension. It was so thick, you step inside, you couldn't see nothing but white. And interestingly enough, there were 3 inches of snow, where in the first week of November, when I hiked up there was no snow. It was a 65-degree day. So I was puzzled by all this. So I entered this fog bank, and I took my time looking around. I couldn't see anything. And I walked through the snow, and I came to a cliff. I said, gee, I got to be careful. If I go off this cliff, I'll be dead, And I'm standing there looking around, and all of a sudden I heard this giant man walking towards me because the snow was crunchy on top.
Yeah.
So
I
heard
hear the heaviness.
Crunch. It had a long gait to it, meaning man was
wide.
big, whoever this two-legged man was. So I listened and listened, and finally I thought, this is kind of spooky. So I followed my footsteps back because I couldn't see in this fog bank. And when I got back out, my 3 friends were there, and I told them what I experienced. And they said, oh, come on. He says, the people at the bottom of and it took quite a while to get up there, incidentally, a few hours. He said, people at the very base, this time of the year, nobody climbs Ben Nevis, and nobody in the last house right at the trailhead, the woman said, nobody's up there. So what is this? And I should come inside in this fog and see. So they followed me in. I just followed my footsteps in the snow, and we stood there, and there was nothing. And all of a sudden, they heard this giant man crunch, walking towards us again. And everybody looked at each other, and finally they got spooked and said, let's get out of here. And they ran because it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah,
and,
right, because there's
so
only
I'm standing
3
there
of you
by
up
myself,
there.
and this. And my 3 witnesses. And I stood there for a minute, and it got closer and closer. Finally, I said, maybe I better get out of here. So I quickly ran out of there. And as soon as we stepped out, I mean, it's like a whole new world again. It was still relatively warm and everything. And everybody looked at each other. And I said, well, what do you think that was? And one of the guys was from Eureka, California, Northern California, where they had all kinds of Sasquatch sightings all over the place. And he said, maybe it's a Sasquatch. And I said, no, they're just in the Pacific Northwest, which is not true. They're in England, Wales.
I know they are.
They're in
everywhere.
They're in Ireland as well, everywhere, Norway, Sweden, and so on. So at the time, this was 1965, I didn't know any better. I just turned 22 years old back then, and I was still studying them as much information as I could get. But to me, that was just a coincidence, some weird thing, you know. But in 1990, when I was living in Oregon, many years later, I
Been
bought
to there, stayed
a
there.
Fate magazine, and at the cover of the Fate magazine, it said, "The Big Gray Man of Scotland." I go, what?
Mm.
And I read it, and it said these geologists experienced this and ran off the mountain themselves. They were so afraid. So it was interesting. And I said, that was, he just described a Sasquatch. And so I said, that was a Sasquatch that I experienced up there with my three friends and so on. So these were some of the very first times. Since then, I've seen them even twice dematerialize in front of me. So I had befriended them. They referred to me as family. So I've had, since then, sometimes on a weekly basis, I've had experiences with them. And also, I've seen 7 different races of ETs that have come to me. Some of them look strange. Some of them were little. Some of them were big, and so on. And I've been very fortunate.
Right.
So
I've been to Oregon. So I've been to Oregon. I've obviously been to Washington State. I stayed at Mount Hood, and I was around quite a few people, but a lot of them were railroaders, and they told me their experiences late at night on the trains on the railroad, which was absolutely extraordinary. And after I'd had my big UFO encounter in Los Angeles, where I went to stay in Santa Cruz, the guy that used to look after the I suppose he was the forester, the local forester that maintained the forest. He told me about his experience early one morning, and which was
like in the woods.
In the woods early morning. It was his only experience, but he was very much into the nature. But he could pick up, he was very psychic, he could pick it up. He only saw once Sasquatch as it turned around. It did the typical stereotype, turned around and looked at him as they both made contact, but then afterwards he would start picking things up. But from the railroaders, it was very interesting to hear. So personally, because also I saw that in 1968 you went to the Himalayas as well.
Yes, in investigating the Yeti, and I had hired a interpreter, and I hiked up into the mountains to a Tibetan monastery and spent a few hours there talking with the monks about the Yeti and so on. But my first experiences actually with telepathy was in Wisconsin. I was working for the Native American people in an agency there, and I was invited to go out to this farm way out in the forest and so on in Wisconsin. And while I was out there, there were several traditional medicine people there, and discussing the property that this other Indian had just purchased. It was an old farm. Now, I left them and went for a walk towards the edge of the woods, and all of a sudden, a Sasquatch started talking to me. And I go, what? It was telepathic. And I wasn't afraid. I was just startled. So I thought, I'm going to go up to the side of this hill and get away from this, because I don't think it's real. It just completely threw me. So I stood on this hill and away from these people, these Native Americans that were discussing the property. And all of a sudden, another more sophisticated voice said, I am a star people, a star person, and I too have been watching you for many years now, longer than you know or understand. So I thought, well, I wonder where he is. And I'm looking around, and I just realized every time I thought, he would answer me. because that's how telepathy works. And anyway, I started talking to him, and I said, well, where are you? He says, I'm above you in a UFO, as you people call it, in another dimension. I'm looking around. I still don't see anything. So finally, all this just, my head was spinning almost with this new reality. Again, I wasn't afraid. I went back to where these 6 Native Americans were, and I sat down. They were sitting in the grass there, and I sat down. And as soon as I did, one of them said, you should build a sweat lodge over there. And the head of house who owned the property said, no, I will not build it there. And the medicine man spoke up and said, oh, no. He said, that's an excellent place to build your sweat lodge. And the owner said, no, I will not build it there. The star people have been landing their spaceships there, and I don't want to disrupt their activity. And I stood up and ran back to the house, literally ran, which was about 100 yards away. That reality just kept hitting me. I had to mentally digest that. So they had a picnic table there, and I sat by the picnic table. Of course, these other people didn't know what I had experienced, and they got in their cars and left. But I was still just sitting there in a daze. And the head of house came over to me and said, animals are attracted to you. He didn't introduce himself or anything, just animals are attracted to you. I noticed you hugging my guard dog. My best friend can't get near that dog. He's vicious, and you were hugging him. And he says, also the Sasquatch are attracted to you. I go, what? How did? And he says, they're on my property here. I discovered, and the star people are dropping them off. And I said, can I come back and camp out here? And he said, yes. And I was the only non-Indian there. And I didn't know, he didn't seem that friendly to me, but because of me hugging his dog and petting it, this has happened to many vicious dogs.
Yeah.
And a lot of wild animals would walk up to me. When I lived in East Africa for 2 years, wild animals would walk up to me. People couldn't understand it. And it was normal for me. I used to have a lot of wild animals as pets growing up, a raccoon, a South African ferret, a crow, and later a hawk and so forth.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You've experienced a lot of beautiful different animals on a personal level.
Yes. So I decided, I said, gee, I'll never tell anybody this because nobody will ever believe me, and I don't want to look like a fool. 2 nights later, I was sleeping in my apartment right in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the city, and a voice said to me, wake up, my friend, we are here. And I go, oh no, a burglar broke in. I expected a gun in my face, and I roll over in bed, and there were 2 Sasquatch standing there in my apartment, and I could see through them. They were in another dimension. And the big one floated down through the floor, so he was about 3 feet away from me, his face, and I could see every wrinkle in his face, and that's how we talked back and forth. And they did this every so many days for 2 months, visiting me at night and talking to me. So I thought, God, I feel so privileged in all this stuff. And they said, we're monitoring you and so on. And I said, well, how long have you been monitoring me? They said, we were there at the moment of your birth because you have a mission with us. Okay. And the mission, of course, me as a scientist, me being very outspoken, being a double Scorpio with a Taurus rising, and I don't give in to anything. So if I'm being made fun of, which a lot of naive experts, Sasquatch experts that don't know what they're doing, but they're experts,
of course,
called me a fraud and all this stuff. And then, that was several years ago. But now some of them are having telepathic experiences.
Yeah,
So the
I mean,
truth always prevails, you know?
yeah, I mean, I believe, you know, people that are the experiencers are will always have the last laugh, and you need to have an experience to be able to say, okay, all right, there is something going on.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, definitely.
Yes. In time, I moved out to Oregon, and they follow me everywhere. And both, I started having ET experiences, spaceships hovering around close to me, ETs appearing to me, and so on, and Sasquatch. I mean, this was on a weekly basis. I
Okay.
mean,
So
some people won't have one experience.
I
And,
know, right?
you know, I mean, it was just wonderful. Then
Can I?
when I was in the Army, I injured my back seriously, and it bothered me off and on through the years. But all of a sudden, my back snapped, and I couldn't walk. Period. I was in a wheelchair, and the pain on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst excruciating pain, mine was a 10.5.
Yeah,
I was
right.
confined to bed and a wheelchair. Neighbors and friends stopped to bring food, do my laundry, and so on. And when I went to 2 different doctors, they both said, my God, this is the worst case of a ruptured disc I've ever seen in my 30 years as a doctor. You're going to have major surgery. Well, it was experimental surgery. This was in 1987. And I said, no. I said, well, I'll give you some painkillers. But the doctor said, the neurosurgeon said, I guarantee you in 10 days, when after you're finished with these pills, you'll be literally begging me to operate on you, because I was really hurting. And I didn't even look the same looking in the mirror, because I was always stressed out, you know, from the pain. And I don't know why, but I turned around and said to the doctor before I wheeled myself out, I said, doctor, you'll never see me again. And my friend, one of my close friends, drove me home. He had to pick me up and carry me into the house. And so I didn't know what to do. And I was just frantic. I'm always been strong. I used to exercise all the time. And so I had a great build and so on. But now I couldn't even walk. I love hiking in the wilderness. I couldn't walk. And so finally, there was a spaceship that used to land. It was consistent 2 days a week. And through binoculars, I could see it close up. And it was almost like a diamond shape, but it was saucer shape, but like a diamond. And it had a rosy, pink, reddish color to it all the time. And it would land behind the mountain that was right beside me there, real close. So I telepathed to it all day long, laying in bed, and telepath, literally begging them to come and heal me. I didn't know if they could. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was so desperate. Nothing happened. The second day, I telepathed all day long again. And by 4:00 in the afternoon, I broke down and wept and wept and wept out of frustration, out of pain, and out of desperation. And finally, I went to bed I still remember about 10:15. I reached over and shut the lights off because I was in bed flat on my back. And all of a sudden, there's movement in my room, moving around. And I said, what the heck? I could barely turn around to see. I struggled to turn. And there were 3 little guys, rough 3.5, 4 feet tall, in little suits on. They were not the grays at all, because they had little suits on and stuff. And they looked slightly different. And they said, we are here to heal you.
In what way they look slightly different?
They didn't have big bulbous heads. They had bigger heads, but not the ones of the grays. And so they said, we're here to heal you. I said, thank you. Come ahead. And I laid back. Of course, I was getting 4 hours sleep a night. I mean, I was exhausted constantly, but the pain kept me up. So they put me out instantly. And then I heard, the next thing I remember is a voice doing, how do you believe some strange language. And it woke me up. I looked up, and there were one on one side, one on the other. And the one behind me had a cylindrical object in his hand. And I looked up at him and I said, "Oh, it's only you. I love you." And then they put me back out again. And I mean, what do you say to people that have come to heal you? And they didn't even ask if I had insurance. Well, but I woke up 10 and a half hours later, totally rested, zero pain.
Oh, I know someone who could do with that right now.
And the next night they came again and said, "We have to do one more healing on you." I said, "Thank you. God bless you." And they came, healed me again. A couple of weeks later, I wanted to go visit my friend who had a 1,000-acre ranch in the wilderness. And I generally stay for 3 or 4 days, and I help him out, and I can just get away from my cottage. And I just remembered that I needed to run to the bank on a Friday. It was different. There were no ATMs back then, to draw out some money so I'd have enough money for gas and food and stuff. So I quickly went into town because it was getting late. They closed at 5 o'clock, and I parked the car and I ran. I used to jog all the time, so I was always good on my feet. And I jogged all the way down the block to the bank. And when I got to the corner across the street was the bank. But to my left, one of the doctors that I saw that said I may never walk again just saw me running. And so he crossed the street, stood there. He was bald-headed, and he kept rubbing his head, pointing to my legs, and his mouth was going up and down, but nothing was coming out. And I said, "Have a good day, doctor." And I jogged across
and he fainted. It's like a miracle. Yeah.
In a daze. So these are some of the wonderful things that have happened to me.
You do get healings. I've had healings before by beings. And I've been shot in the leg, and I got told that I'd never walk again. And, when I was younger, and, I am walking, and I consciously remember healings by beings. What we're going to do now, we're not going to go into a commercial break. We're going to cut to the photographs that you sent me. So if Race is back, you're going to talk us through, Kewaunee, if you could talk us through some of these photographs that we have. If Race can, because first of all, for my viewers, and obviously Kewaunee, I have interviewed Mike Patterson about 4 or 5 times from Ontario Sasquatch, and done all of his put Neff's vocals and everything on. I'm a huge fan of his work and of Neff and the family, and since then I have keep being gifted with marbles or weavings. So that's kind of how I've got back into all of this again. So if we can run through the pictures that you sent, that would be absolutely amazing. So Race Hobbs, are you there? Can you start with the first photograph, Race, that we have, and Kewaunee can talk us through them if Race is there. Is he there? Is he there? More calling awesome.
I didn't quite hear.
We're gonna go through the photos. I'm just going to see where Mr. Hobbs is, and once he comes back, we can go through the photographs. What you've sent us 5 photographs of different types of ranging from night to various, well, you've got one that's interdimensional. That was really quite interesting, because that's what I found when I did speak to some people. One guy that I met in McMinnville, his great grandfather had seen Sasquatch. He had seen Sasquatch on the porch with his sister, and he just watched it solidly then morph away. Now, I used to see spirit as a child, up until probably about the age of 18, 19, when I had my big UFO experience, and then I got told that I had to learn to do things differently. So I'm aware that spirit, like ghosts, let's call them ghosts, can be there solid 1 minute and then totally just absolutely go right before your eyes. So if Race is back, are you there, Race? He's not there yet. Okay, once he's back he will do. So if you Kewaunee, in regards to your photographs, do you get lots of people, obviously because through your own experience you've got to get through the nutters to the people that have actually genuinely had spiritual contact with them? And the fact is, the fact that you've done all the right things, you're around the shamans, you'll go into the monasteries and all of that, wise people that are having these encounters as well. So I don't really know too much. I've never really looked into the ET, but I know that same with UFOs. UFOs are seen everywhere, all over the world. There isn't a country that they haven't been to, or a town that they haven't been to. There are going to be a sighting somewhere for it. So when people come to you, how do you decide that they're real encounters? Do you still go and research them? Do you go meet them? Do you go to the locations? What do you do?
Well, I still are teaching people how to telepath, how to think, and how to approach them. Now, a lot of people, oh no, they so-and-so was going to kill me and all this. I said, no, they weren't. He said, how do you know? I said, you wouldn't be talking right now. You'd be dead. They can catch you easily. Walking towards you is not attacking you. So please don't tell people that.
Exactly.
And they're like a mirror. If you go towards them with violence in your mind, they can read your mind. They're super psychics. And if you have a camera or a gun, they'll chase you out of the area. If you go in with an open heart, and they told me, walk in unconditional love. And if you go in without fear, without a gun, without cameras, and without a group of people, just by yourself, and you're good to them and you feel good about them, they will be good back and they'll help you even home and so on. Not every time. It depends on the person and their, what their purpose is. Some people want to get rich. Some people, all this other silly stuff. So, those that want to kill them, they're the real monsters as far as I'm concerned.
The thing is, it's having an encounter of the extraordinary kind. It's very spiritual and it's very personal. So I don't give a damn what anyone else thinks. Obviously, if you've got a witness with you, that's absolutely amazing. But it's about your spiritual, evolution in yourself. So it's like I don't care about like photographs and footage, even though I've got photographs and footage. At the end of the day, it's only about, my journey. I don't care what anyone else thinks about my experiences. I'm just continuing it. And that's why I continue having these experiences, whether they be UFO related or being related or Sasquatch related. I go in with, I'm always caught off guard, always. And then it's usually generally a new experience. So your head, like you said, your head's trying to sort of like, gauge the situation and everything. I'm soon moving to an amazing cottage in the middle of a wood, and it's got its own graveyard right next to it. So I'm super excited. I am so super excited. They kind of like gifted me to be in this location now. It's like my spiritual path is being put in front of me, and I cannot wait for things. And I don't, everyone's going to say, well, what are you photographing? What are you videoing? I don't care. I am going to put some certain things out there publicly, but it's not for fame or fortune. It's to be able to speak to people and other people that have experienced this. Right. Let's see if Race Hobbs is around. Yes. Let's have a look, because we want to go to pics. Let's have a look, because they are some interesting pics. He's not back yet. He'll be back in a minute. Right. So,
Yes.
carry on.
Some people have said to me, well, you can't prove all that. Psychic phenomena isn't real. I said, it's quantum physics. I said, it's mainstream, and it's all the work has already been done, especially by a man named Dr. Dean Radin. He has books out. He worked for the government, did all this psychic stuff and proved. And other people, other scientists, physicists have also proved it. But the average researcher, 99% of them, maybe 95% of them, have never read anything on quantum physics. So they just poo-poo it without, examining this or researching or reading about it. As soon as I found out and started to experience all this interdimensional stuff and psychic stuff, I started reading off and on different books on physics. I'm not a physicist, but it helped me to understand, all of that. I mean, even I told you about my 1,000-acre friend with a 1,000-acre ranch. Another time I left my cottage in the country, and while I'm driving down the driveway, an ET said, "I'm in a ship above you, and we're going to follow you today on your journey." And it was an hour and 20-minute ride further into the wilderness. And this road was super narrow with cliffs, and there were only one car could fit. So you have to be real careful where you pull over, and there's no fences or nothing. And I'm driving down there, and I'm driving real slow, 15 miles an hour, but it's snaky around cliffs and stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm going downhill, and they had filled in, the county had filled in these potholes, but instead of regular gravel, they used these round, smooth rocks that they could take from the coast.
You'd slide then, wouldn't you?
And I started
You hit that? Yeah, of
over.
course you would. Yeah, right.
I said, gee, I'm coming to a hairpin turn right here. Again, this is super narrow road. And I just gently pumped the brake. I'm going 15 miles an hour. Also, I'm going 20, 25, 30. I'm pumping like crazy. I went right off the cliff, 60-foot cliff, right. Wait a minute. I'm hovering in midair off this cliff, and my window was down. I looked out the window, and I said, holy gee. All of a sudden, the car turns around and goes back down onto the road again. The star people knew that I was going to have this experience, and they didn't want me to die. So they followed me and protected.
Yeah, there's a bigger plan for you.
Yeah. So because they know the future, they know a lot of the future.
Yeah.
Because they can go ahead or go back.
So for me as well, I get told certain things in my head. I get told to get out of the car. And then I have to photograph something. Then there'll be an image that will be but I physically can't see, but then there'll be an image instilled on my camera, and the same with footage as well. So I mean, can I just start? I mean, I've had so many of experiences and only 3 giftings from Sasquatch. But can I ask, I mean, I don't know what I would feel like if I had a UFO and a Sasquatch experience at the same time. I think that would probably be the biggest thing ever for me, because I could totally handle that, but I'd absolutely love that for very many spiritual reasons.
I know of 4 situations where people saw a Sasquatch onto a spaceship. Even Billy Myers saw one, but
I'm a very big fan of Billy. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I've been in contact with Billy many years ago.
Yeah, myself as well. Pascagoula situation in 1975, the 2 fishermen, they reported that there was they didn't report it, but later they told a researcher, and he said, why didn't you tell it in the beginning? He says, because it sounds too crazy, this giant hairy thing, So
but
they were trying to minimize
you've got to report
Yes.
all of the high strangeness to put it all into context, because if you leave that important part out, then somebody else is, when they come out with their story and say, well, I saw a Sasquatch with the UFO, it's like, no, I've never heard of that. But if more and more people were open and honest about their encounters and just said it all, as crazy as it is, because all encounters are absolutely crazy, with whatever you have next to you as in beings. Right, we've got race back. So we're going to start with, we've only got 15 minutes left. So we're going to start with your first picture that Kewaunee sent to me. It is this picture. Talk us through this picture. That is in 1936 in Australia. Talk us through that one, please.
Yes. At the far left of this is a interdimensional yowie, a Sasquatch type in Australia. And these were loggers cutting trees, and they had no idea that they were being monitored. And again, this is a rare, super rare picture, but there it is, plain as day. I mean, you can see it for yourself. And so many of the researchers, some of them call me a fraud. They're just not evolved enough, and to understand. And a lot of these researchers are very violent, so they tell people, "Oh no, I'm not hunting them," but they're lying to the people to get on their property. They do have guns.
I mean, you've got to remember in 1936, they were shooting all of the big animals back then. Hunting was very big back then, wasn't it? So back in those days, the Victorian times, and that's in Australia. So yeah, that is a body. You can see a body, the legs and everything.
Same thing right here in the United States, though. Look at California. They've got a big Kodiak grizzly bear on their flag, but there's not a one left in the state.
Okay, right. Let's go to the next picture. Next slide, yeah, because we've got literally 10 minutes. We end at 55.
This is in Arkansas. A woman was having experiences, and she wanted to get a photograph of them. That's her trailer right there. And she ran outside when she heard it, thinking that she'd be seeing a Sasquatch, but she didn't. There was nothing there, just the footsteps. And as the footsteps walked by her on the other side of this fence, she took a picture, and not knowing that this was interdimensional. So there you have it again. There's
and also if you look to the right of it, just above the fencing, there looks like a shape of a big owl. You can see an owl on the right side. You can see it's two eyes.
No, there's another Sasquatch there, and there's two heads of a Sasquatch on right beside the trailer.
Yeah,
down
one poking out. Yeah, one poking out. Yeah. Yeah, you can see, one big, one larger one, and one at the sort of like the side, and you've got a little bit where the mouth area is a little bit lit up. Yeah, I can see that one. Great picture. Next picture. There you go.
This was taken by a person that worked for an airlines, and he was hiking in the Santa Cruz Mountains in Colorado. He didn't want his name attached to it. He allowed me to have the picture, but this is an ancient one. It is not a Sasquatch. The ancient ones have human faces, round heads, and their arms are in proportion to their body like us. Whereas Sasquatch has a peaked head or a sagittal crest, an ape-like face, even though they're humans. They're not apes or have any, they say they have no affiliations with the anthropoid apes. And the Sasquatch's arms are down to their knees. So this is an ancient one that was running through an opening. And he took this and was shocked. He had a friend with him, a witness, and was just taking pictures. And he thought it was an elk coming through. So he raised his camera and took this picture.
That's fairly large, because you can see you can see the wood stump, and the wood stump's obviously closer. And then you've got, you can see the size of the knee, the thigh, the bottom, and the shoulders. Oh my, yeah, that's. So he never went public. Still to this day, not gone public. Okay, all right. We're going to go to the next one. This was in what is this in Washington State?
This was taken at Bouchard's Gardens in Vancouver Island, which is a big array of all kinds of beautiful flowers and species from all over the world. And a engineer who was in his mid 80s was going to go to a nursing home, and a man who knew me was helping him to pack. And then he had some pictures there. And he said, oh, yeah, this is when I was on vacation. And he looked, he said, wait a minute, what's this up in the corner? Now, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny thing up in the corner. I blew this up. And he says, I don't know what it is. It's nothing. He said, it looks like a Sasquatch. And he says, can I have the picture? And he said, yes. So he gave me the picture. I called the guy up and asked him if I could have it in writing, that I could use it. So he gave me permission. He says, as long as I don't use his name. So the man's hobby was horticulture. He was an engineer and retired, and used to go there because he liked the flowers and all the different plants. And anyway, this is a real Sasquatch photograph. It's a female, incidentally.
Kewaunee, is that November 24th, 82?
I'm trying to look. Yeah, I'm trying to sort of like see as well at the bottom.
Down at the bottom right there, 24/11.
Yeah, I believe it is. Yes, I think
it's my birthday.
Oh, no chance. That's the best bloody birthday card you can get, Race Hobbs. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I'd be so happy if I got that on my birthday. Someone took that.
That's a beautiful picture, though. Really.
They came out. They came out with the Tic Tac video on my birthday. The gimbal. I was like, yes. Right, next one. Interdimensional. Shimmering in, shimmering out.
A woman in Idaho was hiking, and she had a camera, and she was taking pictures of flowers and stuff. And she stepped out of the woods to the stream, and there was a Sasquatch standing there. And she quickly brought up her camera to take a picture of it, and it blipped into another dimension. But she just caught it in between dimensions, which is super, super rare.
Yeah, right.
And so again, I showed this to some of the naive, inexperienced researchers, even though they're experts. Their egos tell them they're experts, and they, oh no, this is just this is what happened to the woman. He says the woman was lying, that this is just a poor a glitch in the film. That's all it was. So these people, and he claims to be scientific, but he never wanted to know anything about it. He didn't want to interview the woman. I had the woman come to my cabin, interviewed her, and all this, and they're the experts. So you have to be careful who you believe.
Absolutely, but to do the research. Thank you, Race, for putting the pictures up. That's brilliant. Thank you. To do the research, you have to go and speak to the witnesses, and actually it'd be really interesting on how her life has changed in many ways. Go for it. That's the other book that I need to. That's the Sasquatch.
This is the other book.
Sasquatch people interdimensional contact.
I should have had a shave and a haircut, but that's all right. No. I want to read from it as a final word.
Okay. Yes, here. Please. You've got 1 minute. Please do. Thank you. Some final. Yeah.
I have in my book here. A Zen monk once said, I'm quoting, all life in nature has a spiritual dimension and is sacred. When we honor other creatures as we do ourselves, we all evolve another step. End quote. So this is it. Any animals that I see, I mean, I've talked to eagles, and they came to me that were flying around. This has happened several times, telepathically. So people, we're all connected if you only use that.
Absolutely.
Like cell phones. I'd rather use my mind and so on. Meditation helps as well.
Times are changing. more and more people are having either experiences because they need to have experiences in their life. The more people that are awakened to this, the better the world will be.
If people want to contact me,
yes,
Sasquatch people at hotmail.com. Sasquatch people at hotmail.com. I can help people, or they can order my book, even autographed book.
I highly recommend. I absolutely love this book. Like I said, I've had it for a long time. Thank you very much. This is part 1. We are going to have you back and to talk more and to go into further depth. So thank you so much, Kewaunee, for having me. No, thank you for being a part of this journey with me as well, and thank you everybody for listening to Kewaunee and wanting to communicate with not just extraterrestrials but also Sasquatch, because the two go together. Thank you so much. See you next week, and thank you again for your time. All right, I really appreciate it. All right, thank you.
Thank you.